Rome 274 CE. The war room falls silent. Emperor Aurelian stands over a massive table, his weathered hands gripping its edges. At 60 years old, every scar on his face tells a story of survival. The map before him shows an empire bleeding from 1,000 cuts. But one wound bleeds deepest. A red line traces from Egypt through Syria to Anatolia. Palmyra, the desert kingdom that dared to challenge Rome. She controls the grain, Aurelian says, his voice like gravel. His generals lean closer. Egypt feeds a third of Rome. Without it, the city starves in 3 months. His finger moves north along the trade routes. She controls Anatolia. No silk, no spices, no Eastern trade. He pauses, letting the weight settle. This woman, this desert queen, has checkmated me economically. The generals exchange glances. One of them, Marcus Aurelius Probus, clears his throat. Emperor, we could march east. 3 legions would crush Palmyra in weeks. Aurelian shakes his head slowly. The movement carries the weight of decades spent in Roman politics. You think like a soldier, Probus. I need you to think like an emperor. He taps the map. Every legion costs 1,000,000 denarii a year. March 3 legions across 1,000 miles of desert. By the time we reach Palmyra, we've spent enough gold to buy 10 kingdoms. He straightens his eyes hard. War is expensive. Fear is cheap. Another general speaks up. What do you propose? We don't just defeat her. Aurelian's voice drops. We study her. We learn what she values. Then we take it from her in front of the entire world. He looks at each man in turn. The question isn't how do we beat Zenobia? The question is, how do we make sure no one ever tries what she tried again? The room absorbs this. Outside Rome continues its daily chaos, unaware that in this room, the fate of an empire is being calculated like a mathematical equation. She made one critical error, Aurelian continues. She forgot that Rome doesn't just win battles. Rome wins minds. Let me take you back, 6 years earlier, to understand how a woman came to hold Rome's throat in her grip. Palmyra, 267 CE. The desert city gleams like a jewel in an ocean of sand. Zenobia stands on the palace balcony as the sun sets over the colonnade. She is 33 years old. Her dark eyes scan the horizon, always calculating, always planning. Below her, the city bustles with merchants from a dozen nations. Persian, Indian, Roman, Egyptian. They all come to Palmyra because Palmyra sits at the crossroads of the world. Behind her, advisors argue in hushed tones. She doesn't turn around. She already knows what they're saying. Her husband is dead. Odenathus, governor of Syria for Rome, assassinated 3 months ago. Murdered while hunting. The official story says bandits. Everyone knows better. Now these men want to know what happens next. Does Palmyra remain loyal to Rome? Does it seek Persian protection? Does it stand alone? Zenobia makes them wait. Let them sweat. Let them wonder. A leader who appears uncertain is a leader who invites challenge. Finally, she turns. 5 men stand before her. Generals, merchants, priests. Each represents a faction that could make or break her rule. My son is 10 years old, she says in perfect Latin. Then she switches to Greek. Too young to rule. Aramaic next, but old enough to learn. Then Arabic, and I am his mother. Finally Egyptian, which makes me regent until he comes of age. The men stare. Most rulers struggle with 2 languages. She speaks 5 fluently. It's a power move and they know it. She can negotiate with anyone anywhere without translators, without intermediaries, without anyone filtering her words. The eldest general Zabdas steps forward. He's 60, built like a bull, commands 30,000 cavalry. The question, my queen, is not whether you can speak to Rome. It's whether Rome will listen. Zenobia smiles. It doesn't reach her eyes. Rome is distracted. 5 emperors in 20 years. Plague, Persian wars, Germanic invasions. She walks to a table where a map mirrors Aurelian's in Rome 6 years in the future. When your enemy is drowning, you don't throw them a rope. You take their boat. You speak of rebellion, another advisor hisses. I speak of opportunity. Her finger traces the Nile. Egypt, Roman garrison of 15,000, half sick with fever. The commander, Marcus Aurelius Probus, hasn't been paid in 6 months. She looks up. What would you do if someone offered you 50,000 denarii to look the other way? Zabdas's eyes widen. You bribed a Roman commander. I negotiated a business arrangement. He gets rich. We get Egypt. Rome gets to avoid a war it can't afford. She moves her finger north. Anatolia next. Not through conquest, through marriages, alliances, treaties. Her hand sweeps across the eastern Mediterranean. Within 3 years, we control every trade route from India to Rome, every grain ship, every silk caravan, every spice merchant. And when Rome notices, the priest asks quietly, they already have. But here's what they're calculating right now. Zenobia's voice is cold precise. Cost of war versus cost of negotiation. As long as I keep sending grain to Rome, among mine as I acknowledge their authority on paper, they'll accept the reality that I control the East. She pauses. I'm not rebelling, I'm becoming indispensable. This was her brilliance. This was her opening gambit. And for 3 years it worked flawlessly. By 270 CE, Zenobia's empire stretches from the Nile to the Bosphorus. Her coins show her face alongside her son's. Technically, they also show the Roman emperor. Technically, she's still a loyal governor. But everyone from Britannia to Persia knows the truth. The East belongs to Zenobia. She has 70,000 troops, a mix of Palmyrene cavalry, the finest horsemen in the world, and Roman defectors who haven't seen a paycheck from Rome in years. Her navy controls the eastern Mediterranean. Her diplomats play Persia against Rome like a chess master moving pieces. She is by any measure a military and political genius, and she's about to make the mistake that destroys everything. 271 CE, Palmyra, the throne room. Zenobia holds a new coin, fresh from the mint. On one side her face, on the other her son Vabalathus. The Roman emperor's face is gone, completely. She has just declared independence, not in words but in gold and silver that will circulate across the known world. Zabdas enters, sees the coin, and his face drains of color. My queen, this is war. This is reality, Zenobia corrects. We already control the East. This just makes it official. You won economically, Zabdas says carefully. Why gamble politically? It's the right question. The question she should have asked herself months ago. But pride has a gravity all its own, and she's been in orbit too long. Because I'm tired of pretending, she says, tired of putting Rome's face on my coins, my empire, my rules. Rome can negotiate with a governor, Zabdas says quietly. They must destroy a rival emperor. The words hang in the air. Prophetic. True. Ignored. In Rome, when Aurelian sees the new Palmyrene coins, he smiles. Not with pleasure, with certainty. She's forced his hand. Now he can do what he's been planning for 2 years. Now he can destroy her with the full support of the Senate, the army, and the people. The campaign of 272 CE is swift and brutal. Battle of Emei outside Antioch. Spring morning air still cool before the desert heat arrives. Zenobia's 70,000 face, Aurelian's 50,000. On paper, she has the advantage. In reality, she's walking into a trap that Roman generals have perfected over centuries. Her cavalry charges. Palmyrene horsemen, the best in the world, thundering across the plain in a cloud of dust and fury. The Roman cavalry turns and runs, flees, breaks formation. It's the oldest trick in the book. The feigned retreat. Hannibal used it at Cannae. Julius Caesar used it in Gaul. Every Roman general learns it in training. Zenobia's cavalry pursues. Of course they do. They're winning. They chase the fleeing Romans for 3 miles formations, breaking apart discipline, dissolving in the thrill of victory. Then Roman infantry appears from the hills, fresh, rested, in perfect formation. They hit the scattered Palmyrene cavalry from 3 sides. It's not a battle anymore. It's a slaughter. Zenobia watches from a distance as her finest troops are cut down like wheat. She has 2 choices. Retreat now, save most of her army, fight another day. Or commit her infantry, try to salvage a tactical victory. Pride makes the choice for her. She sends in the infantry. They march straight into the same Roman troops who just destroyed her cavalry, now reformed and ready. The fighting lasts 6 hours. By sunset, 20,000 of her soldiers are dead. The survivors flee south toward Palmyra. She should have stopped there, should have sued for peace, should have offered concessions. Rome might have accepted. Aurelian was a politician after all. He understood that conquered provinces are expensive to maintain, but she retreats to Emesa, gathers reinforcements. 50,000 men, all that remains of her military might, and she meets Aurelian in open battle again. This is the fatal flaw of brilliant leaders, the inability to recognize when brilliance has run its course, when it's time to cut losses and survive. Battle of Emesa, summer 272, CE. Heat like a furnace. Zenobia's army holds higher ground. It's a good defensive position. If she plays it right, she could make this so costly for Rome that Aurelian accepts a negotiated settlement. But playing defense means acknowledging weakness, and Zenobia hasn't acknowledged weakness in 6 years. She attacks, downhill, into Roman heavy infantry, into the shield walls and short swords that have conquered the known world. Her troops are brave, desperate, doomed. By nightfall, Palmyra's army ceases to exist as a fighting force. Zenobia flees, not west where Rome controls everything, east, toward Persia, the enemy of her enemy. If she can reach the Persian court, she can negotiate sanctuary, maybe even military support. The Persians would love to have Rome's greatest eastern threat as an ally in exile. It's smart. It's her only play. And she comes within 50 miles of making it work. The Euphrates River, dawn. Zenobia's small party of guards and servants reaches the crossing point. Boats wait on the other side. Persian boats, freedom, survival. Roman cavalry appears on the ridge behind them. One of her guards steps forward. My queen, we can hold them here. You cross. Now, Zenobia looks at the river, looks at the 10 men willing to die for her, looks at her son, 15 years old now, old enough to understand what's happening. She could run, could make it to those boats, could spend the rest of her life as a guest of the Persian king, plotting a return that will never come. Or she can surrender, on her terms, while she still has bargaining power. If I'm alive, she says slowly, my children might live. She turns to face the Roman cavalry, raises her hands, the universal gesture of surrender. The lead Roman officer dismounts, approaches carefully. He's expecting a trick, a hidden weapon, poison, something. Zenobia just stands there, straight-backed, queenly, already calculating her next move. I am Zenobia, Queen of Palmyra, she says in perfect Latin. I wish to negotiate the terms of my surrender directly with Emperor Aurelian. The officer stares. In 30 years of service, he's never seen anything like this. Most defeated rulers choose death, poison, sword, anything but chains. I will not beg, Zenobia adds. I am still a queen. But the chains go on anyway. Iron first, cold and heavy. The officer apologizes almost. It's procedure. She understands. She spent 6 years giving orders. She knows how chains of command work. Now she understands how the other kind of chains work too. Let me show you another queen, another time, another choice. Britain, 60 CE, 212 years before Zenobia's surrender. King Prasutagus of the Iceni lies on his deathbed. His wife Boudica sits beside him. She's 35 years old, tall for the time, nearly 6 feet, red hair that catches firelight like copper. A voice that can rally warriors or soothe crying children with equal ease. Prasutagus coughs, blood flecks his lips. The fever has had him for 3 days. Everyone knows he won't see sunrise. The will, he rasps. Tell me you understand. Boudica's jaw tightens. She understands. She hates it, but she understands. Half to Rome, half to our daughters. It's the only way, Prasutagus whispers. If I give them everything, they'll take it anyway and kill our family. If I give them nothing, they'll take it anyway and kill our family. His hand finds hers. This way, maybe they'll be satisfied. Maybe they'll let the girls live in peace. It's the calculation of the conquered, the mathematics of survival under occupation. Give the empire enough that they don't crush you completely. Keep enough that you maintain dignity. It's a reasonable plan, a smart plan. It's the plan dozens of client kings across the empire have used successfully. It fails completely. 3 months later, spring of 60 CE, Boudica stands in her great hall. It's barely dawn. Roman soldiers surround the building. Not a few, not a patrol, hundreds of them. The doors crash open. Procurator Catus Decianus enters. He's 40 soft around the middle, the kind of man who got rich off other people's suffering. Behind him, a Roman official carries scrolls. Queen Boudica, Decianus says, not respectfully, just stating a fact he's about to change. Your husband's will has been reviewed by Rome. It has been found invalid. Boudica's hand moves toward her sword. 20 Roman soldiers draw their bears. She freezes. Invalid by, her voice is dangerously quiet. King Prasutagus was a subject of Rome. Subjects don't write wills. They don't own property. They administer it on Rome's behalf. Decianus smiles. It's the smile of a man who enjoys breaking people. Therefore, upon his death, all Iceni lands, properties, and assets revert to the Roman treasury. He was your ally. He fought beside your legions against the Catuvellauni. Roman generals dined at his table. And Rome is grateful. That's why we're handling this civilly. Decianus nods to his soldiers. Inventory everything. Prepare it for transport to Londinium. Boudica steps forward. You cannot do this. We have a treaty. We have a dead client king and a province in debt. Decianus' smile vanishes. And we have a woman who seems to forget her place. The words are calculated, deliberate. He wants her to react, wants her to give him an excuse. Boudica controls herself. Barely. I demand to speak with Governor Suetonius. This is not Roman law. This is theft. Decianus turns to his soldiers. The queen wishes to speak with the governor. She seems confused about the chain of command. Perhaps we should clarify it for her. What happens next is not spontaneous. It's not soldiers getting out of hand. It's policy. It's a message sent with brutal clarity. They drag Boudica outside, in front of her people, her nobles, her warriors, everyone who ever looked to her for protection. They tie her to a post in the village square. The whip is leather-braided, designed to maximize pain without killing. In front of the Iceni people, in front of their mother still bleeding from the whipping post. It's not random violence. It's calculated degradation designed to break the royal family and demonstrate Roman dominance, symbolically breaking the royal bloodline, destroying any mystique of untouchable nobility, sending the message we can do anything to anyone. The soldiers laugh while they do it, joke about it after. To them, it's just another day in the provinces. To Boudica, it's the moment everything changes. That night, as healers tend her wounds, as her daughters lie silent and traumatized in the next room, Boudica makes her choice. Different from Zenobia's choice. Opposite of Zenobia's calculation. Not survival, not negotiation, not waiting for a better opportunity. Revenge. Pure. Total. Absolute. 2 weeks later, she sends word to every Iceni village, to the Trinovantes tribe, to the Catuvellauni, to everyone who's ever suffered under Roman occupation. The message is simple: rise. Now, while Governor Suetonius is 200 miles north, fighting Druids in Wales, while the legions are scattered, while the colonies are undefended, rise now and burn Rome's Britain to ashes. And they do. 80,000 warriors answer her call. Some come for freedom, some for plunder, some because they've been waiting for someone, anyone to throw the first punch. But most come because of what Rome did to Boudica and her daughters. Because if it could happen to a queen, it could happen to anyone's wife, anyone's daughter. Rome has made this personal. Boudica will return the favor. The intelligence is perfect. Governor Suetonius is in Anglesey destroying Druid strongholds. The nearest legion is a week's march away. The Roman colonies have no walls, no real defenses. They've been peaceful for 17 years. They've gotten comfortable. Boudica picks her first target with precision. Not for strategic value, for symbolic destruction. Camulodunum, modern Colchester, the first Roman colony in Britain. Population 30,000, mostly retired Roman soldiers who served their 25 years and got land grants. Their families, their children who have never seen Rome but call themselves Roman. It's a soft target. The veterans are in their 50s and 60s now, out of shape, out of practice. They have some swords, some old armor, no training, no command structure. They have a temple, though, the Temple of Claudius, built to honor the emperor who conquered Britain. It's massive. Marble columns, bronze doors, the biggest building in Britain. The Britons hate it. It represents everything Rome took from them. It was built with their labor, their taxes, on land that used to be sacred to their gods. Now it's going to become their tomb. Night attack. Fire arrows first launched from 1,000 bows simultaneously. The thatched roofs catch instantly. Within minutes, half of Camulodunum is burning. The Romans stumble from their homes, grab weapons, try to form some kind of defense, but they're scattered, disorganized, fighting shadows in the smoke. Boudicca's warriors come through the fire like demons. No mercy, no prisoners, no hesitation. Old men who fought Rome's battles in Germania die in the streets of the colony they helped build. Women and children burn in their homes. The survivors, maybe 200 of them, barricade themselves in the Temple of Claudius. It's the strongest building. Thick walls, heavy doors. If they can hold out a few days, maybe Suetonius will return. Maybe a legion will arrive. Maybe. Boudicca's forces surround the temple. They don't assault it. They just wait. Cut off all food, all water. Let the people inside understand that no help is coming. 2 days later, they set the temple as on fire. The people inside have a choice: burn or come out and face the swords. Either way, they die. 30,000 dead in 3 days. Every building destroyed. Archaeologists have found a layer of ash 30 centimeters thick under modern Colchester. Evidence of heat so intense it melted pottery and glass. Rome has controlled Britain for 17 years. In 72 hours, Boudica erases every trace of Roman presence in their first colony. And she's just getting started. Word reaches Governor Suetonius in Wales. He's 200 miles away with 10,000 troops. The nearest legion, the Second Augusta, is in the southwest. Another 2 legions are in the north. Suetonius makes his calculation. He can march to defend Londinium, the commercial hub. Population 25,000, mostly civilians. Or he can march to defend Verulamium, another Roman town. Or he can consolidate his forces and meet Boudica with overwhelming military strength. He chooses survival over heroism. He sends a message to Londinium: evacuate. Anyone who can walk, run hide in the forests. The old, the sick, the young who can't travel, you're on your own. Rome cannot defend you. It's the right military decision. It's also a death sentence for thousands. When Boudica's army reaches Londinium, they find a ghost town. The rich fled. The strong fled. What remains are the people who couldn't run, the elderly, the crippled. Children too young to understand what's coming. 25,000 people die in Londinium over 3 days. Archaeological evidence matches the ancient accounts. Another thick ash layer, burned buildings, mass graves. The methods are deliberate: crucifixion, impalement, burning. Boudica wants Rome to know exactly what happened here, wants survivors to spread stories, wants the terror to ripple across the empire. This isn't warfare. This is theater. This is making a statement in blood and fire that Rome will read from Britannia to Syria. After Londinium, Verulamium, another 20,000 dead. Total casualties, 70,000 Romans in less than a month. 70,000 civilians, men, women, children. Doesn't matter. They're all Roman or Roman sympathizers. They're all complicit in what happened to her daughters. Tacitus preserves a speech he attributes to Boudica. Whether she actually said these words or whether Tacitus imagined them doesn't matter. The sentiment is real. I am not fighting as a queen seeking to preserve my kingdom. I fight as a woman avenging my tortured body and the violated honor of my daughters. I fight as a mother whose children were destroyed by men who call themselves civilized. Let them call me barbarian. Let them call me savage. But let them never forget what happens when you push someone beyond the edge of endurance. And Rome doesn't forget. How could they? She's killed more Romans in a month than Britain lost in the entire conquest. But here's the thing about rage. It's a powerful fuel. It gets you moving, gets you through the impossible. But it's not strategic. It doesn't think 3 moves ahead. It burns hot and fast, and when it runs out, you're left standing in the ashes of your own fury. Suetonius returns from Wales. He has 10,000 men. Legio 14, Gemina 5,000 heavy infantry. Legio 20, Valeria 3,000 reinforcements. 2,000 auxiliary cavalry. Boudica has 80,000 warriors. On paper, she's already won. 8-to-1 odds. Any competent commander would sue for peace. negotiate, declare victory, and go home. But Suetonius is not any commander. He's one of Rome's best. And Boudica isn't fighting for territory anymore. She's fighting because stopping means facing what happened to her daughters, means living with it instead of running from it on a wave of violence. They meet somewhere in the Midlands. The exact location is lost to history, but the battlefield description survives. Narrow valley, forest on both sides, a natural funnel that turns Boudica's numerical advantage into a tactical nightmare. Boudica makes another mistake. She brings the families. Wagons full of women and children and old people ready to watch the final victory, ready to celebrate when Rome is driven from Britain forever. They position the wagons behind the British army, blocking the retreat route. It's a statement of confidence. We won't need to retreat. This ends today. Suetonius looks at the battlefield and smiles. He's fought in these conditions before. He knows exactly what's going to happen. The British charge, 80,000 warriors screaming down the valley. It's terrifying. It's overwhelming. It should work. The Romans form a wedge, a cuneus they call it, designed to split enemy formations. The front ranks lock shields. The second rank holds pila 7-foot javelins. First contact, the British warriors hit the Roman shield wall like a wave hitting a cliff. The front rank of Romans doesn't break. They're drilled for this. They've practiced this formation 1,000 times. The second rank throws pila over the shields. The javelins arc down into the British warriors. Each javelin weighs 6 pounds. Thrown from close range, it punches through shields, through armor, through bodies. The front British ranks fall. The ones behind push forward. They can't stop. 80,000 people in a narrow valley means the back ranks don't even know what's happening at the front. They just keep pushing. More pila, more bodies falling. The British dead start to pile up. Warriors trip over corpses. The formation fractures. Roman infantry advances. Not running, not charging, just walking forward in perfect formation. Shield, step, staring, shield, step, staring, mechanical, efficient, unstoppable. Hours pass. The killing becomes systematic. The British warriors are brave. They're fierce. They're dying 3-1 because courage without discipline is just another word for suicide. By midday, the British front lines break. Warriors try to retreat, but the wagons are behind them. Their own families block the escape route. Panic spreads. The retreat becomes a stampede. Warriors trample their own people trying to flee. Roman cavalry, fresh and waiting, hits the flanks. It's not a battle anymore. It's a slaughter. By sunset, 80,000 British lie dead. 400 Romans, 400 versus 80,000. That's not luck. That's discipline. That's training. That's the Roman military machine doing exactly what it was built to do. Boudica escapes the battlefield with her daughters. They ride hard, north toward tribes that haven't submitted to Rome yet. Maybe they can rebuild. Maybe they can try again. But Boudica knows better. She's seen the Roman machine up close now, seen what happens when courage faces training, when fury faces discipline. That night in a forest somewhere in Britain, Boudica makes her final choice. She has poison, hemlock most likely, fast, relatively painless. The weapon of choice for those who want to die on their own terms. Her daughters are with her. Sources suggest they took poison too, but records are unclear. Maybe they did. Maybe they survived and were captured and enslaved and had their names erased from history. Either way, they disappear from the record after this night. Boudica's final thoughts are not recorded. But we can imagine. Can she see her daughters' faces the moment everything changed? Does she wish she'd made Zenobia's choice, survival over defiance, life over honor? Or does she die knowing she did exactly what needed to be done? That she showed Rome the cost of cruelty? That 70,000 Roman dead is a message that will echo across the empire. The poison works quickly. By dawn, the greatest threat to Roman Britain lies dead in a forest grave that history will never find. 2 queens, 2 choices, 2 centuries apart. Zenobia calculating survival in chains by the Euphrates. Boudica choosing poison over surrender in a British forest. Both brilliant, both fierce. Both made one fatal mistake. Zenobia thought like a queen, not like a general. Gambled politically when she'd already won economically. Boudica thought like a warrior, not like a commander. Let emotion dictate strategy when cold calculation might have won. Rome studied both mistakes, learned from them, turned their choices into weapons. Because Rome doesn't just defeat enemies on the battlefield. Rome defeats them in the mind, in the spirit, in the collective memory of every nation that thinks about resisting. Two queens made their choices. Now Rome would make sure the entire world knew the price of those choices. The machinery of imperial psychology was about to demonstrate its most terrifying power. Not the power to kill. Any empire can kill. The power to transform defeat into a spectacle, to turn human suffering into political theater, to broadcast one woman's humiliation across 1,000 miles and make it serve as warning for 1,000 years. Emperor Aurelian was about to teach the world a lesson, and Zenobia, still calculating in her chains, was about to become the classroom. 2 years pass. Zenobia sits in a villa outside Rome. Not a prison, not technically. Villa Publica, they call it. Public house. The place where foreign dignitaries stay while Rome decides what to do with them. The place where defeated enemies wait to learn if they'll be executed, enslaved, or turned into propaganda tools. The villa is beautiful. Marble floors, frescoed walls, gardens with fountains. A golden cage is still a cage, but at least the bars are pretty. Every day tutors come. Latin instructors, protocol experts, Roman historians. They're preparing her for what they won't say. But Zenobia can guess. She spent 6 years ruling an empire. She understands theater, understands how power communicates itself. Rome is going to make an example of her. The only question is how. Morning 274 CE, 2 years after her capture. The door to her chamber opens. Not a servant, a Roman official in full regalia. Queen Zenobia, the Senate has approved Emperor Aurelian's petition. You will participate in his triumph 10 days from now. Participate. Such a gentle word for what's about to happen. Will I be executed? She asked it calmly. Needs to know, needs to plan. The official hesitates. That decision rests with the emperor. Then softer, almost sympathetic. Prepare yourself, my lady. 10 days is not much time. After he leaves, Zenobia sits in silence. 10 days to prepare for either death or something worse. She's seen triumphs before. Palmyra hosted Roman generals who'd conquered Armenia, Mesopotamia, Arabia. She knows what happens to captured rulers in these parades. Most are executed at the end, strangled in the Tullianum prison while the city celebrates. Clean, quick, merciful in its way. But some survive. Some are kept alive, turned into curiosities. Living proof of Rome's mercy. Walking advertisement is for the wisdom of submission. Which fate is worse? She has 10 days to decide if she hopes to live or die. In Rome, the preparation is massive. 50 million sesterces, the budget for Aurelian's triumph. Enough money to feed the entire city for 2 months. Why spend so much? Because peace through intimidation costs less than permanent garrisons. Because one spectacular triumph creates more compliance than a dozen military campaigns. Because the money isn't being spent on Aurelian's ego. It's being spent on Rome's security. The planning committee meets daily. Yes, there's a committee. Rome bureaucratizes everything, even spectacle. They plan the route. Campus Martius to the Temple of Jupiter. 4 kilometers, 9 hours of slow marching, 500,000 spectators lining the streets. Every moment choreographed for maximum impact. They plan the procession order, who walks where, what they carry, what they wear. The triumph is a story told in living tableaus, and every detail must serve the narrative. Senate and magistrates first, showing the civil power structure. Then trumpeters, the sound of Roman authority. Then carts loaded with treasure, gold from Palmyra, silver from Egypt, silk from eastern trade routes. Physical proof of what Rome has reconquered. Then the paintings. Enormous canvases showing Palmyra burning, showing Zenobia's capture, showing battles that went differently than they actually did. History isn't about truth, it's about narrative. And Rome controls the narrative absolutely. 20 white bulls next, destined for sacrifice at Jupiter's temple. Their blood will sanctify the victory. Make it holy as well as political. Then the prisoners. This is where the committee argues. How many, which ones, in what order? Zenobia first, obviously. She's the star, the reason for the whole production. Then her son, Vabalathus, 16 years old now, tall like his mother, terrified in a way she never allows herself to be. After them, 24 Palmyrene generals. Half will be executed, half will be enslaved. They don't know which half yet. The uncertainty is part of the torture. Finally, 200 captured soldiers. Tomorrow they'll be sold in the slave markets. Today they march in chains so Rome can see that Palmyra's military might is broken. But the real genius, the detail that makes this triumph legendary, is the chains they're forging for Zenobia. Not iron, gold. 30 kilograms of gold chain. So heavy she'll need servants to help carry the weight. So bright it'll catch the sunlight and turn her into a walking, glittering monument to Rome's wealth. The symbolism is perfect. The gold she used to pay her armies. The gold she used to bribe Egyptian commanders. The gold that bought her empire. Now turned into the instrument of her bondage. When the committee presents the design to Aurelian, he studies it for a long moment. Will she be able to walk the full route? We've calculated the weight distribution. With 2 attendants to help support the chains she should manage. If she collapses halfway through, it sends the wrong message. What message does it send? That we're cruel, that we broke her. The official pauses. We want her to endure. We want foreign ambassadors to see that she could walk 4 kilometers and 30 kilograms of gold without begging. That proves she was a worthy opponent, which makes our victory more impressive. Aurelian nods slowly. And if she refuses, if she collapses deliberately, then we carry her. But I don't think she will. She's proud. That pride will make her walk every step. She'll endure out of spite, and we'll let her because her endurance serves our purpose better than her collapse would. This is the calculation. This is the genius of Roman psychological warfare. They're not trying to break Zenobia. They're using her pride against her, letting her dignity become part of the spectacle. The day arrives. August 274 CE. Rome wakes before dawn. 500,000 people line the streets. Vendors sell food, wine, souvenirs. Children perch on their father's shoulders. Everyone wants to see the desert queen who challenged Rome and lost. In Via Publica, servants help Zenobia dress. They've prepared her costume carefully. Not Roman clothes, not prisoner's rags. Her full royal regalia, crown, jewels, the finest silk from her own trade routes. Again, the symbolism. Look at what she was. Look at what she's become. The contrast is the message. The golden chains go on last. 30 kilograms distributed between her wrists, neck, and ankles. 2 servants, strong men, stand beside her to help bear the weight. Zenobia looks at herself in the polished bronze mirror. Queen of the East, reduced to a parade float. Can you walk? One of the servants asks gently. She takes a step. The chains pull. Her wrists hurt already. 4 kilometers. 9 hours. She's about to find out what endurance really means. I can walk. They lead her to the starting point. Campus Martius, the field of Mars. She can see the procession forming. Senators in togas, musicians with trumpets, carts being loaded with treasure that used to be hers. And there on a golden chariot, Emperor Aurelian himself, 60 years old, scarred, hard, wearing the toga picked up purple embroidered with gold, reserved for triumphs. He looks like a god. That's the point. He sees Zenobia. Their eyes meet. He nods slightly. Not mockery, not cruelty, just acknowledgement. One player to another. You made your move. I made mine. Now we play our parts. The trumpets sound. The procession begins. The first hour is the hardest, not physically, mentally. The reality of what's happening settles in. Every step takes her farther from everything she was. Every step takes her deeper into what she's become. The crowd roars as she appears. 500,000 voices rising like thunder. Some are jeering, some are cheering. Most are just excited to see something they'll tell their grandchildren about. A child's voice cuts through the noise, high and clear. Mother, why is she wearing a crown? A woman's response. To remember what she lost, darling. 4 words. They hit Zenobia harder than the whip ever hit Boudica. To remember what she lost. That's why they kept her crown. That's why they dressed her in silk instead of rags. so everyone can see the distance she's fallen. Hour 2, Via Sacra, the sacred way, the heart of Roman power. She passes the Senate House, the building where Aurelian petitioned for this triumph, where old men debated whether her life was worth more as a symbol or a sacrifice. The paintings appear, enormous canvases mounted on carts. The first shows the Battle of Amau. But it's wrong. In the painting, Roman cavalry chases fleeing Pomerines. There's no feigned retreat, no tactical genius, just Roman superiority crushing Eastern weakness. The second painting shows Palmyra burning. She's never seen Palmyra burn. Aurelian sacked it after her capture, but she was already gone. Now she's seeing her city's destruction rendered in oil and canvas. Buildings she grew up in, streets she walked, all ash in someone's imagination. The third painting is the cruelest. It shows her kneeling before Aurelian, begging for mercy. She never knelt, never begged. But truth doesn't matter. This painting will be copied, distributed, hung in public buildings across the empire. 1,000 years from now, people will believe she knelt. She wants to scream that it's a lie, that she surrendered standing, that she never begged. But screaming would prove she's broken. So she walks, silent, straight-backed, letting the lies parade past while she maintains the only dignity left to her. Hour 3, the chains are cutting into her wrists now. The servants try to adjust the weight, but there's only so much they can do. 30 kilograms is 30 kilograms. Physics doesn't care about symbolism. Her son walks behind her. She can't see him, but she can hear his chains, lighter than hers. Iron, not gold. He's not important enough for gold. She wonders what he's thinking. He's 16, old enough to understand they're being humiliated. Old enough to hate her for the choices that led here. Too young to understand that every choice was a trap. That winning meant losing differently, not avoiding loss altogether. Hour 4, Roman Forum, the commercial heart of the city. The crowd is thicker here, merchants, shopkeepers, common people who will never see the inside of the Senate House, but who vote with their cheers and jeers. Someone throws a rotten apple. It hits her shoulder, splatters. The crowd laughs. Guards move to stop further throwing, but damage is done. She's not untouchable anymore. She's a thing people can throw fruit at. More hours blur together. The sun climbs. August heat. She's thirsty. Her feet hurt. The chains feel heavier with every step. The servants beside her are sweating from the effort of supporting the weight. She focuses on breathing, on putting one foot in front of the other, on not falling. Because if she falls, she loses everything. Falls and she's not a queen enduring. She's a broken woman who couldn't walk 4 kilometers. Pride is a weapon. Rome is using hers against her, but it's still the only weapon she has left. Hour 7, the ascent to Capitoline Hill begins. It's steep. The servants struggle. She struggles. Behind her, she hears prisoners collapsing, hears guards beating them, hears the crowd's excitement rise at the violence. Keep walking. Don't look back. Don't react. Just climb. The hill seems endless. Her legs shake. The chains cut deeper. She can feel blood on her wrists now. Warm, wet, staining the gold. But she doesn't stop. Can't stop. Because at the top of this hill, she'll learn if she lives or dies. And she needs to reach that answer on her feet. Hour 8. The Temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus. The greatest temple in Rome. The end of the sacred way. The end of the triumph. Aurelian dismounts from his golden chariot, climbs the temple steps, disappears inside to make his sacrifices and prayers, to thank Jupiter for victory, to sanctify what Rome has taken. Zenobia and the other prisoners are made to kneel outside. Wait, the uncertainty is deliberate. Is this where it ends? Is the next sound she hears going to be guards leading her to the Tullianum? She kneels for an hour. The gold chains pull around her like a puddle of wealth. Her wrists bleed freely now. Her back aches, but she keeps her head up, keeps her eyes forward. Aurelian emerges. The crowd falls silent. This is the moment. Life or death. Glory or execution. 500,000 people hold their breath. The Queen of Palmyra has entertained Rome well. Entertained. The word is carefully chosen. She's not a defeated enemy. She's entertainment, a spectacle, a curiosity. She will live as a Roman. The crowd erupts. Some cheer, some boo. Everyone has an opinion about whether mercy or execution would serve Rome better. Zenobia doesn't react. Can't. She's too exhausted. Too overwhelmed. She walked 4 kilometers and 30 kilograms of gold, and at the end of it, she gets to live. Should she be grateful? Relieved, horrified. A Roman official leans close, whispers so only she can hear. Don't thank him. This is a slower death. They lead her away. The triumph continues without her. Aurelian's chariot circles the temple. The army marches past singing victory songs. The white bulls are sacrificed, their blood running down the temple steps. But Zenobia is already gone, being taken to a different villa, Tibur, Tivoli, 30 kilometers from Rome, close enough to summon if needed, far enough that she's not a daily reminder. She'll live there for the rest of her life, however long that is. Let me show you what happened to the queens who weren't shown mercy. Let me show you the alternative Zenobia escaped, the Tullianum, the Mamertine prison, built into the northeastern slope of Capitoline Hill. 700 years old when Zenobia walked past it. It will stand for another 2,000 years. 2 levels. The upper chamber, called the carcer, 9 meters by 6 meters, 1 grated window, barely enough light to see. This is where prisoners wait. Below that, accessed only through a hole in the floor, the Tullianum itself, 6 meters underground. No windows, no doors. The only entrance is that hole in the ceiling. Once you're lowered down, the only way out is the same way, or death. The Romans designed it this way deliberately. Prisoners in the lower chamber can hear the triumph celebrations happening above them, can hear the crowds cheering, can hear the victory songs, can hear everything except hope. Vercingetorix knew this prison well. The great Gallic chieftain who unified the tribes against Julius Caesar, the man who nearly drove Rome from Gaul. He was captured at Alesia in 52 BCE, spent 6 years in the upper chamber of the Tullianum while Caesar fought civil wars and consolidated power. 6 years in a cell 9 meters by 6 meters, no sunlight, minimal food, just enough to keep him alive, not enough to keep him healthy. By the time Caesar's triumph came in 46 BC, Vercingetorix was barely recognizable, blind in one eye from vitamin deficiency, missing most of his teeth from scurvy, emaciated. The vigorous warrior who'd commanded 60,000 Gauls was now a shambling wreck. They paraded him through Rome anyway. Let people see what resistance gets you. Let them see the mighty brought low. After the triumph, they brought him back to the Tullianum, lowered him through the hole into the lower chamber, and strangled him with a garrote, clean, quick, out of sight, while above Rome celebrated Caesar's victories with wine and festivals. Jugurtha, king of Numidia, got it worse. Captured in 105 BCE after 7 years of war, the most expensive conflict Rome fought in that era. Millions of denarii spent, thousands of Romans dead. Rome wanted its money's worth from Jugurtha's suffering. They stripped him naked, threw him into the lower chamber. No food, no water, no light, just cold stone and darkness and the sound of celebrations filtering down from above. 6 days later, guards opened the chamber, found Jugurtha mad, hypothermic, starving. In his delirium, he'd scratched at the walls until his fingers bled. His last words, according to Plutarch, were asking how cold this Roman bath was. He died thinking he was drowning. Died confused and terrified and alone. Died as a lesson to every other king who thought about defying Rome. The Tullianum has no mercy in its stones, no compassion in its darkness. It's a machine designed to transform human beings into cautionary tales. So when that Roman official told Zenobia that living is a slower death, he wasn't being poetic. He was being literal. Because there are things worse than the Tullianum, and Zenobia is about to experience one of them. But first, let me take you back to Britain, to show you what Boudicca's rage accomplished, to show you the impact of choosing death over survival. The aftermath of Watling Street is catastrophic. For everyone, 80,000 Britons dead on the battlefield. Their bodies rot in the summer heat. Suetonius's men strip the corpses, take weapons, armor, jewelry, anything valuable. The rest is left for the crows, the families who came to watch victory. Many died in the stampede. Others are captured. sold into slavery, scattered across the empire, mothers separated from children, husbands from wives. Every Iceni household will have a missing person. Everyone will know someone who died. But the British aren't the only ones bleeding. Rome nearly lost Britain. 70,000 civilians dead. 3 cities destroyed. The most successful rebellion in the province's history. In Rome, Emperor Nero receives the reports and considers pulling out entirely. Britain costs more than it produces. The mines don't yield enough silver to justify the garrison costs. The grain is poor quality. The weather is miserable. Why keep it? The Senate debates for weeks. Arguments fly back and forth. Military men say hold it. It's a matter of pride. We can't let a barbarian queen drive us from a province we conquered. Accountants say abandon it. The math doesn't work. Every year in Britain is money down a hole. Eventually they compromise. Keep Britain but reform how it's governed. Fire Procurator Catus Decianus, the man whose greed started this whole mess. Prohibit arbitrary seizures of allied tribes' property. Treat client kings with more respect. The reforms last about 50 years, then corruption creeps back in, then another rebellion, then more reforms. The cycle continues for 300 years until Rome finally does abandon Britain in 410 CE. But Boudicca's rebellion changes something fundamental. It proves that pushing people too far has consequences. That cruelty has cost. That even Rome's military can't overcome the fury of people with nothing left to lose. Tacitus, writing 40 years later, reflects on this. He's unusual among Roman historians. He shows sympathy for Rome's enemies. Admiration even. He writes that Boudicca's rebellion taught Rome that cruelty has limits, that sometimes mercy is cheaper than military campaigns, that breaking people completely doesn't make them obedient. It makes them desperate. And desperate people do desperate things, like burning 3 cities and killing 70,000 Romans. But here's the question Tacitus doesn't answer. The question that haunts everyone who studies Boudicca. Did she win? She lost the war, lost the final battle catastrophically, died by her own hand rather than face capture. Her people were slaughtered, her lands were occupied, her daughter's fates are unknown but probably terrible. By every military measure, she lost absolutely. But Rome changed its policies because of her. Rome nearly abandoned Britain because of her. Rome still talked about her decades later, centuries later, 2,000 years later. Meanwhile, governors who ruled successfully for decades are forgotten. Client kings who played the game perfectly and died rich and comfortable don't have statues, don't have legends, don't have their names remembered. Boudica lost everything and gained immortality. Zenobia kept her life and lost her identity. Which one won? The question doesn't have an answer. Can't have an answer, because winning and losing aren't binary when you're talking about legacy, about meaning, about what your suffering purchases for future generations. Boudica's suffering bought policy changes. Her daughter's rapes became a line Rome wouldn't cross again. Not out of morality, out of pragmatism. Because the cost of pushing that far was 70,000 Roman dead. Zenobia's survival bought her daughters' lives. Let them marry into Roman nobility. Let her bloodline continue, even if it continued as Roman instead of Palmyrene. Her endurance during the triumph bought her a comfortable villa instead of the Tullianum. Both women calculated. Both made choices consistent with their values. Neither got to choose the full consequences of those choices. And Rome learned from both. Learned that psychological warfare works better than simple execution. That living symbols of submission are more valuable than dead martyrs. That humiliation properly choreographed serves empire better than simple violence. This knowledge, this understanding of how to break people without killing them, becomes Rome's most enduring weapon. More powerful than the legion. More lasting than the roads. The ability to turn defeat into spectacle, to transform human suffering into political theater, to broadcast one person's humiliation across an empire and make it serve as warning for centuries. Aurelian's triumph doesn't just defeat Zenobia, it defeats every future rebel who hears the story and thinks twice, every client king who considers independence and remembers golden chains, every queen who weighs survival against defiance and does the math. The triumph isn't really about Zenobia at all. She's just the actress playing a role in a show that will run for 1,000 years. Long after she dies, long after Aurelian dies, long after the specific details blur into legend, what remains is the message. Challenge Rome, and this is what happens. Not death, something more complex. Something that makes you wish for death. That's the true genius of imperial psychology. Not making people fear dying, making them fear living as a monument to their own defeat. And Zenobia in her villa in Tivoli is about to understand exactly what that means. 5 years after the triumph, Villa Adriana Tibur, 279 CE, Zenobia sits in a garden. Marble benches, fountain playing in the background, roses blooming in the Mediterranean sun. Beautiful, peaceful, suffocating. She's 40 years old now, still strong, still sharp, but the gray in her hair multiplies faster than she'd like. The scars on her wrists from the golden chains have faded to white lines, permanent reminders of the day Rome turned her into a walking advertisement for submission. A servant approaches. "My lady the senator has invited you to dinner this evening. His wife specifically requested your presence." Of course she did. Senators' wives love having Zenobia at their parties. The exotic former queen, the curiosity, the conversation piece. They seat her at the head table and pretend it's an honor. Then they ask questions designed to remind everyone what she lost. "Tell us about Palmyra. Was it really as beautiful as they say? What's it like to command an empire? How does it feel to lose everything?" The questions are never hostile, always wrapped in silk, but the blade underneath is sharp enough. Zenobia has learned to smile, to give them what they want, to play her role as the reformed barbarian queen who now appreciates Roman civilization, because the alternative is losing the small freedoms she's managed to preserve. Her daughters are Roman now, fully, completely. The elder married Senator Marcellus 2 years ago, political marriage arranged by Aurelian. She had no choice in the husband, no choice in the timing, no choice in anything except whether to smile at the wedding or weep. She smiled. Of course she smiled, because Roman matrons don't weep at weddings. And she's a Roman matron now. That's the role, that's the price of survival. Her daughter gave birth last year, a son. Zenobia's grandson. He's being raised Roman, speaks only Latin, worships Roman gods, will probably serve in a Roman legion someday. The bloodline continues. But is it still her bloodline if it remembers nothing of Palmyra? Her younger daughter is engaged. Another senator, another political connection. Aurelian's using her family like chess pieces to bind the Eastern aristocracy to Rome. It's brilliant. It's exactly what she would have done in his position. That's the worst part. Understanding the strategy that's destroying her identity, appreciating the genius of it even as it erases everything she was. Her son is gone. Vabilathus. Official records say he died in captivity. Year unknown. Cause unknown. Just gone. Erased. Like he never existed. Zenobia knows what that means. Male heirs are threats. Daughters can be married off and absorbed. Sons might rally resistance. Might become figureheads for rebellion. Better to remove the possibility entirely. She doesn't know when he died. Doesn't know how. Wasn't allowed to grieve publicly. Just woke up one day and he wasn't in the villa anymore and no one would answer her questions, and eventually she stopped asking. That's when she understood. Survival isn't the same as living. The Roman official was right. This is a slower death. Tonight's dinner party is typical. 20 guests, Roman nobility, a Greek philosopher visiting from Athens, an Egyptian merchant who made his fortune supplying Rome's grain, and Zenobia, the token barbarian queen who learned civilization. They seat her between the senator's wife and a young patrician woman who's never seen the East. "Queen Zenobia," the young woman gushes, "I've heard so much about you. Tell me, what was Palmyra really like?" Zenobia takes a sip of wine. It's good wine, Roman, from vineyards in Campania. Not the spiced wine she grew up drinking. That's illegal now. Palmyrene wine is considered inferior. Barbaric, not suitable for civilized palates. Palmyra was a trading city, she says carefully. Beautiful architecture, mix of cultures, Roman, Persian, Arabic, Greek, all living together in relative peace. "But you weren't at peace with Rome," the senator's wife interjects, smiling. always smiling, the blade hidden in silk. I made errors in judgment, Zenobia replies. The scripted answer, the safe answer. I confused independence with wisdom. Emperor Aurelian showed me the difference. The table nods approvingly. This is the correct response. The reformed barbarian acknowledging Roman superiority. Everyone can relax, can enjoy their dinner without the discomfort of the unrepentant defiance. But inside Zenobia is screaming, is remembering the library she built in Palmyra, the scholars she patronized, the translations of Greek philosophy into Aramaic, the schools where children learned mathematics and astronomy and rhetoric. All gone now. Aurelian sacked Palmyra after her capture, destroyed the library, shattered the scholars. The city still exists technically, but it's a shadow, a provincial backwater. Nothing like the jewel of the East it used to be. She's a shadow too, going through the motions of this Roman life, speaking Latin, wearing togas, worshiping gods she doesn't believe in, smiling at parties where people treat her like an exotic pet. The dinner ends. She returns to her villa. The servants bow as she enters. They're respectful, kind even. They have no reason to be cruel. She's harmless now. A defeated queen playing Roman matron. No threat to anyone. She dismisses them, sits alone in her chamber, looks east out the window, toward Syria, toward the desert, toward everything she was. Does she regret it? Regret declaring independence? Regret printing coins without Rome's face on them? Regret the gamble that lost her everything? Some days, yes. Some days she thinks if she'd just been patient, if she'd played the long game, she might have outlived Aurelian, might have seen Rome collapse into civil war again, might have found another window. Other days, no. Other days she remembers riding at the head of 70,000 troops, remembers governors bowing to her, remembers the moment she realized she controlled an empire, and she thinks those years were worth the price. But tonight, alone in her golden cage, she can't decide. Can't know if survival was wisdom or cowardice. Can't know if Boudica's choice was braver or just simpler. All she knows is that she's alive. Her daughters are alive. Her grandchildren will be Roman senators and equestrians. Her bloodline continues. At what cost? At the cost of everything that made it her bloodline. She dies sometime around 279 CE. The exact date is lost. One day she's at a dinner party playing her role. The next she's gone. No triumph, no funeral, no monument, just gone. Erased. Like Vabalathus, like Palmyra, like everything she built. The grandchildren barely remember her. The great-grandchildren don't know she existed. By the 4th century, her descendants are fully Roman. Mention Palmyra, and they might recall some distant connection, exotic ancestry. Nothing important. Zenobia saved them by erasing herself. Is that victory? Is that defeat? The question outlives her by 2,000 years. Let me show you Boudica's opposite fate. Let me show you the power of choosing myth over survival. Victorian England, 1902. They unveil a statue in London. Bronze. Massive. A woman on a chariot. 2 horses rearing. Daughters beside her. Spears raised. Defiant. The plaque reads Boudica, Queen of the Iceni, died 61 C, fighting Roman occupation. The irony is perfect. The British Empire, which has conquered a quarter of the world, which controls more territory than Rome ever did, chooses as its symbol a Celtic queen who fought against empire, against occupation, against everything Britain now represents. They don't see the irony, or they see it and don't care. Because Boudica isn't really about British resistance to Rome anymore. She's about British courage, British defiance, British refusal to submit. The fact that modern Britons are the Romans, not the Celts, in this scenario doesn't matter. Mythology doesn't care about consistency. It cares about what stories make us feel. And Boudica's story makes people feel powerful, makes them feel like resistance is possible, makes them believe that even hopeless fights are worth fighting. Suffragettes in the early 1900s adopt her as a symbol. Women fighting for the vote carry banners with her image. They're not subtle about the parallel. Roman men denied British women autonomy. British men deny British women the vote. Different empire, same principle. Some of them get arrested, get force-fed in prison, get brutalized by police, and they invoke Boudica's name. The woman who would rather die than submit. The mother who watched her daughters violated and chose revenge over survival. They win eventually. Women get the vote in 1918, then full equality in 1928, and Boudica's statue stands in London the whole time, watching, witnessing, reminding. World War II. Nazi Germany occupies France. Belgium, Netherlands, Poland, half of Europe. Britain stands alone. American help is years away. Soviet help is uncertain. Everything points to inevitable defeat. Churchill gives speeches about fighting on the beaches, never surrendering, keeping the flame of freedom alive, even if the whole continent falls. And people remember Boudica, the queen who fought impossible odds, who burned 3 Roman cities, who came within one battle of driving Rome from Britain entirely. She lost, but she fought, and sometimes fighting is more important than winning. Britain survives, barely, at tremendous cost. And after the war, they talk about the spirit that saved them, the refusal to submit, the Boudica spirit. Again, the irony is thick. Britain just fought to preserve its empire, its colonies, its occupied territories. It fought to keep doing to others what Rome did to Boudica. But mythology doesn't care about irony. Modern day, 2020s, archaeologists still search for the battlefield where Boudica died. Dozens of theories, hundreds of dig sites. No definitive answer. But people care. People fund the research. People write books and make documentaries and create video games. All about a queen who lost a war 2,000 years ago. Meanwhile, client kings who ruled successfully for decades are forgotten. Governors who managed provinces peacefully don't have statues. Roman emperors who brought stability and prosperity are names in history books that nobody reads. Boudica lost everything and gained immortality. How did this happen? How did defeat become more powerful than victory? Because Boudica's story isn't about winning. It's about refusing to accept certain kinds of loss, about drawing lines that can't be crossed, about saying there are things worse than death. And that story resonates across cultures, across centuries, because every generation has its own empire, its own occupation, its own moment when survival requires submission and submission requires destroying something essential. Boudica says no, says death first, says I'd rather burn the world than live in chains. For people facing their own empires, that message has power. More power than cautionary tales about the cost of resistance. More power than examples of successful collaboration. It's not rational. Boudica's choice got 80,000 people killed, got her daughters killed or worse, accomplished nothing strategically. Rome stayed in Britain for 300 more years. But rationality isn't what makes a story immortal. Emotion is. And Boudica's story hits the emotional center of the human experience, the place where we keep our rage at injustice, our refusal to be broken, our willingness to lose everything rather than lose ourselves. That's what Rome never understood. You can defeat armies, you can occupy territory, you can even turn queens into propaganda tools. But you can't kill a story, can't occupy the imagination, can't turn mythology into a client state. Boudica died in a forest somewhere in Britain. Her body was never found. Her grave is unknown. Her daughters' names are lost. Every physical trace of her existence has dissolved into time, but the story remains, grows, transforms, becomes whatever each generation needs it to be. Feminist icon, anti-colonial symbol, representation of maternal fury, example of the price of resistance or the necessity of resistance, depending on who's telling it. Zenobia has statues too, in Syria. Before the Civil War, Damascus Airport was named after her. She appears in Arabic poetry as a symbol of Eastern pride, pre-Islamic strength, the golden age before conquest. But her story is more complicated, less pure. She survived, she collaborated, she watched her children become Roman. She spent 15 years as a living example of the wisdom of submission. That's harder to mythologize, harder to turn into a simple symbol, because survival is messy. Survival requires compromises that make for uncomfortable legends. But maybe that's the more important story, not the clean choice between victory and death, but the murky middle ground where most people actually live, where you survive, where you adapt, where you preserve what you can and mourn what you lose and try to find meaning in the ruins of what you hope for. Both stories are true. Both stories matter. Neither one is more right than the other. They're just different answers to the same impossible question. How do you maintain your humanity when empire gives you only inhumane choices? Let me show you what modern warfare learned from both queens. Let me show you how their choices echo into our present. Geneva Conventions, 1949. The world is rebuilding from the most destructive war in human history. 50 million dead, cities reduced to ash, entire populations displaced, and diplomats from around the world gathered to write rules for the next war. Because there will be a next war. There's always a next war. The question is how to make it less terrible. Article 3 addresses treatment of prisoners, prohibits violence, torture, humiliation, degrading treatment, public display of prisoners for propaganda purposes. Every word in that article exists because of women like Zenobia and Boudica, because of triumphs and public beatings and rape as a weapon of war. Because humanity spent 2,000 years learning that breaking people doesn't create peace. It creates Boudicas. The laws don't always work. Wars since 1949 have violated every prohibition imaginable. But the laws exist. The framework exists. The acknowledgement that some things shouldn't happen, even in war, exists. That's progress. Slow, insufficient, but real. War crimes tribunals, Nuremberg, Tokyo, Yugoslavia, Rwanda. For the first time in history, leaders are held accountable for how they conduct war, not just for losing, for the methods they use to try winning. Sexual violence is prosecuted as a war crime. Rape as a tool of genocide is recognized formally in international law. Boudica's daughters finally get a form of justice, 2,000 years late, but acknowledged. The Rome Statute establishing the International Criminal Court specifically lists public humiliation as a war crime. Trials must be conducted with dignity. Prisoners can't be paraded, can't be displayed, can't be turned into spectacles. Zenobia's triumph becomes illegal under international law, not retroactively, but for future wars, future empires, future people trying to decide between the Tullianum and the golden chains. It's not enough. It will never be enough. But it's something. It's the world slowly learning what Rome knew and weaponized. That psychological warfare can be more devastating than physical violence. That humiliation can break spirits that torture can't touch. That spectacle can serve power more effectively than simple execution. And having learned it, having seen what empire can do with that knowledge, we've tried to create rules against it. Tried to say that some weapons are too terrible to use even when you're losing. Even when using them might win. We're not very good at following these rules. Every conflict reveals new ways to break them, new justifications for old cruelties, new technologies for inflicting ancient pains. But the fact that we feel we need justifications is progress. The fact that violations provoke outrage is progress. The fact that we were just following orders is no longer an acceptable defense is progress bought with the suffering of every Zenobia and Boudica and nameless daughter whose story we'll never know. Let me take you to one final place, to show you how their choices live on, how the question they faced remains unanswered and unanswerable. Mamertine Prison, Rome, present day. You can visit it now. €10, audio guide included. They've installed lights, railings, made it safe for tourists, turned a place of horror into a historical attraction. Thousands visit every year. School groups, historians, tourists following guidebooks. They descend into the lower chamber where Vercingetorix and Jugurtha died, where countless prisoners spent their final hours listening to celebrations above. The stones are still there. Original Roman construction, 2,000 years old. You can touch the walls where prisoners scratched their final messages, can see the hole in the ceiling where they were lowered down, can imagine the darkness, the cold, the certainty that no one was coming to save you. Some visitors are reverent. They understand they're standing in a place where history turned people into examples, where individual suffering became imperial policy. Others take selfies, smile, make jokes. They don't mean disrespect. They just can't process the weight of what happened here. So they reduce it to another tourist stop, another Instagram opportunity. And maybe that's fitting. Maybe that's the final victory of time over empire. The place Rome built to terrify the world is now a quirky attraction between the Colosseum and lunch. But late at night when the tourists are gone and the lights are off and the city settles into silence, if you stood in that lower chamber, you'd still feel it. The weight of saucering absorbed into stone. The echo of voices that were never meant to be forgotten, but were forgotten anyway. Every empire builds monuments. Rome built this and called it justice. Every empire has its Zenobias, its Boudicas, its daughters whose names are lost, its queens who had to choose between impossible options and live with the consequences. We judge these choices from comfortable distance, from nations built on the ruins of their empires, from lives where we'll never face that particular calculation. Survival or defiance, death or dishonor, which matters more? It's easy to admire Boudica's defiance when you're not watching your daughters die. Easy to criticize Zenobia's submission when you're not wearing 30 kilograms of gold. Easy to have opinions about choices you'll never have to make. The truth is simpler and harder than judgment. Both women were brilliant. Both were fierce. Both loved their children and their people and their power. Both made the choice that aligned with their values. Offers different flavors of loss. You can offer different flavors of loss. You can choose which bitterness to taste. But you can't choose sweetness. That option disappeared the moment Rome decided you were in the way. Zenobia chose survival, lived to see her bloodline absorbed into the empire that destroyed her, lived to hear her grandchildren speak only Latin and worship only Roman gods, lived to attend dinner parties where she smiled and played her role and died a little more inside every time. Was it worth it? Ask her descendants. If you could find them. If they knew they were descended from the Queen of the East, if that knowledge meant anything to them at all. Boudica chose death, became a legend, became a symbol, became whatever each generation needed her to be, lost her daughters and her people and her life, but kept something Zenobia lost, the right to her own story. The refusal to let Rome write her ending. Was it worth it? Ask the 80,000 dead at Watling Street. Ask her daughters whose names we'll never know. Ask the Iceni people who lived under Roman occupation for 300 more years because their queen's rebellion failed. There's no good answer. There's no right choice. There's just the choice each woman made and the price each woman paid and the echoes that reach us across 2,000 years of people asking the same question. What would you do if empire came for your family, your dignity, your identity? If the only choices were submission or death? If winning was impossible but losing came in different shapes? Would you be Zenobia? Calculate, survive, endure, preserve what fragments you could, and mourn what you lost and hope that somewhere down the line, your sacrifice bought something for someone? Or would you be Boudica, burn it all? Take as many of them with you as possible. Die on your feet rather than live on your knees. Let the next generation figure out how to rebuild from ashes. You don't know, can't know, because knowing requires standing in that moment. Until you're already past the point where the distinction matters. Both women made their gambit against empire. Both lost the game. But the game continues. New empires, new queens, impossible choices. And somewhere in Rome, the walls of the Mamertine prisons still stand. Silent, patient, waiting for the next person who needs to understand the price of defiance, the cost of survival, the weight of choices that history will judge but never forgive. 2 queens, 2,000 years. The stones remain. So do the questions. Which crown would you wear? Which chains would you carry? Which poison would you choose? Or would you find a third option that Zenobia and Boudica never saw, a way to thread the needle between submission and suicide? A path that leads somewhere other than the Tullianum or the Triumph. If you find it, write it down. Because the next empire is always coming, and the next queen is always going to need better options than the ones we've offered for 2,000 years. Until then, remember their names: Zenobia, Boudica, and all the daughters whose names we lost. Remember what they chose, what they paid, what they bought with their suffering. Remember that empires fall, all of them, eventually. But stories endure, choices echo, and questions that have no right answer are still worth asking. Because maybe the answer isn't in the choice. Maybe it's in the asking. in the refusal to let empire make our impossible choices seem inevitable, in the insistence that there should be better options even when there aren't. Zenobia walked 4 kilometers in golden chains and survived to regret it or treasure it or simply endure it, we'll never know. Boudica burned 3 cities and drank poison and became immortal, or became forgotten, or became whatever we need her to be, which amounts to the same thing. Both of them stood where empire told them to kneel. Both of them made choices with consequences they couldn't control. Both of them echo into our present, asking questions we still can't answer. That's their legacy, not victory, not defeat, just the stubborn insistence that the question matters, that the choice, however impossible, belongs to the person making it. That empire can take everything except the moment when you decide which loss you'll accept and which loss you'll die resisting. The stones of Mamertine remember. The streets of Rome remember. The ash layers under British soil remember, and we remember. We must remember, because their choices were impossible. But they were theirs, and someday the choice might be ours.